You doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. How's my boy?
He's loud and proud today.
Loud and proud.
He's been yapping. He's been
Oh,
yapping this morning. So.
does he pester you a lot?
He does. It's funny because it's just a part of my ritual every morning to put on perfume. I'm a perfume person. And I was putting my perfume on. He's like, "Aren't you glad you smell good for the video now?" Like, why the hell are you putting?
That is
I'm
so
not going
funny.
anywhere. But still,
That's
he's
hilarious.
just like, whatever.
Hey, Eric, guess what?
So yeah,
Guess what, Eric? I love you.
he's going like this.
Aww. Hey, so, with all the events happening with Fidel Castro dying, before we get into our other subjects, I thought I'd ask Eric, could you tell us a little bit about what the future holds in store for Cuba? Let's just get right into it.
He said, "Sure, Mom, we'll jump right into it." And this is his response. He goes, "Well," and he's going like this, like, "It don't look so good." So, he keeps using the word, again, whatever you're talking about is a newsflash to me. I don't know what you're talking about, but
Yeah,
he's
Fidel Castro died.
He's showing a major, he keeps using the word like change over. Now what he means by this though is not with like this person or the leadership, but more so all the way down to the individual. I don't know what this means or anything, but there's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of it feels very unsafe in this location. It feels very unsafe. It feels chaotic. It seems like, and I don't know if this is true or not, but it seems like rules, regulations are, I don't know what this death means, but he's showing me like these rules and regulations are being tossed out the window. I don't know if this is just like common everyday laws, which is what it seems like, but it seems like it's tossed out the window, and it just feels very unsafe. It's a very unsafe place to be right now.
Well, Eric, try to use words instead of images and energy if you can. But tell me, Raul is obviously Fidel's brother is going to take over. Will he be different than Fidel?
He says not a lot different, not much. He says.
Okay, and
it's so interesting, Elisa, when you talk to Erik in those certain like mom tones, the way that you ground his energy is just so intriguing to me. When you say use your words, not images, his vibe just shifted completely.
Oh wow!
And so I can hear
a lot better. I'm always going to be your mom. Got to listen to your mom.
It's just the way you ground his energy is really really interesting. He responds, yeah.
So
anyway, but yeah.
So will there be after Raul retires supposedly in 2018, his vice deputy or whatever, I can't remember his name, would take over, a younger guy? Is he going to start reforms and freedom of religion and all that stuff, or is it just going to be more of the same of Fidel and Raul? Just a brutal dictatorship.
This is his response. He's like acting like such a little brother right now. He's being such a turd. That's a nice way to put it.
Exactly.
Because he's like all right here. He's like, "Can you hear me now? Are you listening?" He's like, "You better be listening because I'm talking." He's like, "Oh, but he says, "Mom, it's rigged." He makes me feel like he says, "You know how." No, okay, so he's showing the hierarchy, like just it's rigged, like it's just passed down and passed down. It's like I feel like no, he's being such a punk. He goes from here till eternity, and I said, "No, you can't really go that far, can you?" And he's like,
"So there won't be change, Erik. It's not going to be. They're not. Will they ever find freedom for the people? Will there ever be freedom for the Cuban people?"
He says, "Not like we know it here."
But will it be better than it is?
It will. It will be better. But he's showing. He's talking about whoever comes in and takes over. That is still very rigged. it's already like predetermined. Like that's the feeling he gives me,
Yeah,
that it's already predetermined.
it's all embedded in the military and all the government and all that. Is that what it is?
He says yes, and then two, the people. Um, there's a lot of fear. Like he's talking about them being very fearful of like having a voice, speaking up, speaking out. So again, in the bigger picture, it's afraid to be free,
Yeah.
and afraid to do anything to feel that way or seek their own freedom. So it's sad just from my perspective and what he's showing, that they're very apprehensive and very fearful no matter who comes in,
Yeah.
because I feel like this way of life has been instilled in their heads for a long time.
Yeah. Well, oh, go ahead.
He just keeps showing, as far as freedom, um, he just keeps shaking his head no.
Well, what will Trump try to do with that relationship?
He says this is one of those situations where you get more bees with honey, and he's like making that sarcastic face, like.
Okay.
So I think he's going to try to really nurture the bond or relationship in order to kind of. And then he just interrupted himself, and he said, Mom, you keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Mm.
And he leaned in and he goes, and he winked.
So that's what Trump will do?
I think he says, yeah, he's going like this. He says, Trump's a smart man when it comes to that, like getting real close
Okay.
with his enemies. So,
but he will not be able to help the Cuban people with negotiations and such? Like, will they, for example, like releasing the prisoners of war and all that kind of stuff? Negotiating for that.
Erik shows him being successful in developing a relationship that is trustworthy enough to make changes. But it's like, again, it's like walking on eggshells. I think that there will be a slight change based on Trump's interactions. Mm-hmm. But even with Trump and his approach, believe it or not, Mom, he says, most of the time this dude's like a wrecking ball, he says, but it's going to be like walking on eggshells. Like Trump will be like walking on eggshells and being very careful and very strategic about each move that he makes.
Okay.
No matter what it's in regards to.
Maybe he'll make incremental changes, like do a deal where they release some of their political prisoners and, get something in exchange for that. And then eventually do something else that will, help.
I think that's what he's talking about when Erik talks, when he's talking about Trump being very strategic and very, sorry, he's just being Erik today. He's really honoring.
Who else is he going to be?
But with him just being strategic, I think each move he makes is going to be what determines the bond or nurtures the trustworthiness between us and them. Okay. So just like you said, in increments, like that's what builds the trust. And I think Trump knows that, he says, and Trump's going to use that approach.
Well, what good is it going to do if, Erik, you just told us that it's going to be an eternity of an oppressive existence?
Well, he says, but, like he has this big old but at the end of his message, and he says, but I do feel like, well, first of all, he's talking about Cuba. It's, for whatever reason, it's important for Erik to acknowledge Cuba not being a strong threat to us. As all this begins to take place and unfold, again, this is all future reference, them not being a threat to us. So I think he literally is using the words, Trump will be able to weasel his way in more and more and more after each step he takes.
Okay.
But as far as leadership, he goes like this. I think Trump is going to heavily influence what happens there, but I don't think that he, based on what Erik's showing, he won't take over the way that it's ran, the way that the country itself is ran. think it's still going to be, it's like slotted out. Erik is showing it. It's already like determined. It's already slotted out. So
Okay.
I don't know if it's their system and how their system is already determines who's next, and but it's hard. It's going to be hard to break that
Yeah.
system that's already in place.
Well, Russia is thinking about reopening bases and stuff. Is that going to be a threat? Just like Bay of Pigs type threat? Okay, good.
He says no.
All right. Well, maybe we can. You can ask. I want to ask Fidel. You can just ask him remotely, Erik, or bring him in. What he thinks about his country and the way he governed it. I don't need a full-fledged interview with him, but because he has to get in line behind everybody else.
He's just showing remotely, connecting with him, and again, I don't know anything about this person, but this is what Erik shows. When you say, "What do you think about your country?" or anything to that effect, it's very much standing behind his purpose in the movements he made. He's showing me, again, he being Erik, not bringing forward Fidel, but Erik is showing me this person being like governing through fear and governing, like using fear tactics to govern his people. And it's, again, I'm very ignorant to this, but Erik makes me feel like also the
well, tell
consequences to not abiding by.
Yeah, but tell me the words that Fidel's saying, Erik. Tell me, is he saying like, "Yeah, it sure was a mistake for me to be a brutal dictator. Now I see it all," or was he? I mean, to tell me he can talk about whether it was a contract or not. I want to hear words, Erik.
This is what I hear, and Erik is just, he's going like this, he's cupping his ear, and he's just acting as a channel.
Okay.
So this is what I hear. I stand behind my purpose. I stand behind what I do. What I do, not what I did, but what I do. He's showing, now energetically, he's showing that his purpose, he's just showing a lot of damage, but control through fear. And I know that, he says, I know I had control through fear, but it's very, he's also saying, like, no remorse. I just keep hearing him repeat that because.
Well, was it a contract? Because what? I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, he's showing this is what he says, one way or another. It's like one way or another, he would do whatever it took to have control. Control through fear was the easiest way for me, he says. So I think that part is going to diminish, the control through fear. Like, that's what he's saying.
Okay.
The control through fear will diminish, but it still feels extremely abrasive as far as consequences, and not abiding by, regulations and laws. The consequences seem very severe. This is Erik chiming in. He says, Erik takes a very serious tone, and he has his hand up like this. He says, but you can't expect change over one turnover. Like, you can't expect. And I just feel like it's because of this country that we're talking about. He says, because of the traditions or something.
Right.
But Erik says, you can't expect change to be, like night and day with just one new leader.
No, of course
because
not.
It's like the tradition is so instilled.
Yeah.
I think it's like multiple leaders to come through and create changes. And then, of course, the collateral effects of that linger, he says, Erik says, will continue to perpetuate the changes needed. Eventually, Mom, he's showing like a long time down the line, eventually this will become a place of peace and freedom.
Oh, good.
And he's going like this. So he means like more peace and freedom.
How long? Generations, decades, 7 years? What's it looking like? I know free will can change everything, but.
He's showing like out past 25 years.
Okay, but hopefully it'll incrementally get better. Well, so
Yeah,
so
and it's not like it's going to take until then for us to
okay,
see changes.
okay,
Um, he's just going like this. He says, but what I'm talking about right now, the peace and freedom, um, it will begin, but it's a slow. It's like he goes, it's like at a snail's pace, and
I
that's what he
bet.
does.
It's been
It's
so
like moving at a
long since they've had freedom. I don't think they'd know what it would look like. But Fidel, so you think the way that you governed and you killed so many and imprisoned so many, and you have so many restrictions on freedom, do you think that was right?
This is what I hear. There was no right or wrong. The need to react to it that way is the human mind, the
Yeah,
human emotion, the human self, he
that's what Erik
says.
says too.
He says and he has a very heavy tone,
Hmm.
very heavy vibration. Um, he says, the purpose, I stand behind the purpose in what my being caused, like the ripple effects,
Okay.
um, the collective experience from his being. He says, okay, he takes a very matter-of-fact tone. He says, my purpose was this, to create change in a drastic way.
Hmm.
He said harmful at first, and then he changed it to drastic.
Okay.
He says to create change in a drastic way, um, because he says, the ultimate effect is going to be the individual um, analyzing, like uh, uh, being internally directed, guided, versus externally. So the bigger picture of all of this, he says, is creating individuals, creating a people, a collective
Hmm.
that eventually will turn to themselves and look inside themselves, um, for direction, for peace, for harmony.
Because that's all
Um,
they have control over. They don't have any control over the external influences, so that makes sense. So, you're so externally controlled that all you have control over is your self direction. Is that what it is?
he says that is what it is, and it's about, even through the most drastic, and he uses the word derogatory, um, of events and circumstances, one can maintain hope through their own inner self and inner emotions. He's very it's not like he's hard to understand. He's just very careless, maybe. Like, when Eric's here, he's very focused and very like, here's the information, but he's
Okay.
just like all over.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Fidel is. Okay, got it.
yeah. So I'm just like, can you focus? He's just kind of like pacing and just wandering and just kind of like throwing his hand, like just seems very careless. I'm not sure how to describe him.
Okay.
But he says that um, pushing individuals through circumstances to force them to look internally, to restore their own hope for themselves, by themselves, is a bigger picture of the cause of my being, my
Interesting.
incarnation.
Instead of looking for
So it's
hope
like,
through others, instead of looking through hope for hope through others, teach them how to
yeah, because
find hope for themselves.
he makes me feel like whatever he did in his physical life, if we were to have relied on external anything, hopelessness would be the first thing, right in front of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
It's like whatever he put these people through, they had to look inside to find any sense of hope.
Yeah.
And essentially, whether this country or any other, he says, he's like so interesting, this character.
Hmm.
He has a cigar. He's just like walking around with a
Mm-hmm.
cigar and very I don't know if this is a word, but he's like in a contemplative phase, like contemplating
Okay.
just his beingness. But he's showing having a huge effect on people, knowing it was brutal, he says, but the purpose of it, no matter what circumstances, to get people to look inside themselves and find hope there and know that hope is there. It was about the difference between hope and hopelessness.
Okay. Well, one last question.
Introverting.
Okay. Wait,
Sure. You're
to, one last question. I think you were an atheist. So, after you crossed over, what do you think? Change your mind?
He definitely, when you said, I think you were an atheist, his energy got strong, so you grounded his energy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a yes.
Okay.
Very much so. His energy just gets really strong on that. When I ask him, what are your thoughts now? He's looking at the bigger picture and talking about.
Bella, stop it.
It isn't as I expected, but he's looking at it more in the scientific view of like consciousness survives the physical death.
Okay.
But as far as, and this is what he says, as far as heaven and amazing colors and everything being euphoric, he says, it's a sense of knowing that it's here, but it's also allowing. So it seems like he must be newly transitioned or something, because it seems like he's still carrying on to these human thoughts of, like, I need to allow happiness, peace, and joy without circumstances. Okay. So he's still like in this contemplative phase. I think I'm making up words now. I'm not sure, but
it should be a word if it isn't. It's a great one. All right, well, thank you. I think we better move on, because I don't know the attention span of if people have my attention span, they're not going to be able to last through this entire thing, because I went over a little bit. But anyway, thank you, Kim. Thank you, Fidel. Good luck with your transition, the rest of your transition, and good luck with your life review.
I will say he feels very wise, and he offers gratitude to you. He feels like a very, very wise soul, and he offers a lot of gratitude and says thank you.
Well, he had so many interesting things to say. And thank you, Erik. We'll talk in a little bit. Oh, by the way, a lot of you guys, YouTube viewers, have no idea that the main thing we have is the blog, Channeling Erik, Erik spelled with a K. That has a lot more celebrity and historical figure interviews on it that are not in video format. A lot of things that are not in video format but are still quite interesting. So check it out. www.channelingericwithak.com. Bye.
Bye-bye.